It's hard to believe that Mass Effect has been with us since 2007, and I have been a fan since the day I got my hands on the original game 15 years ago. 15 years! Starting to get old nowadays. But for those of you that missed the game and its subsequent sequels the first time, or were only wee little children, the Legendary Edition was released last year and brought with it a new generation of fans to enjoy the universe that BioWare created that means a lot to a lot of people, myself included. And for those of you who prefer a challenge, there are varying difficulties for all 3 games to test your skill and mettle. And these games can be controller breaking hard on Insanity, especially Mass Effect 2, but that's a story for another video. And since I consider myself an expert on all things Mass Effect, since I've completed these games dozens of times, each as well as trophy and achievement hunting, I thought I'd give out my personal tips to help you get through each game on Insanity. Side note, these are not in any order and I will put timestamps for the chapters so you can go back and forth at your leisure. And I should also say that for this list I have chosen Classic XP when it comes to setting up my Shepherd. If you try it with the other leveling system, feel free to leave a comment giving any tips on that particular style. Also, I don't think I need to put a spoiler warning on this video since I assume you've already played the game once if you're watching this, but if you haven't, you have been warned. I need to explain some mid and end game things, so if you haven't already played Mass Effect, go play it and then come back. So with all that out of the way, I'm Craig, this is Amalgamingle, and these are my top 5 tips for Mass Effect 1 Insanity. Where better to start than the beginning of the game? Unlike its sequels, you cannot reuse a Shepherd from a previous save when starting an Insanity run, especially if you want the trophy/achievement, so you have to start from scratch, and this is where personal preference comes into play. I highly recommend you create a custom Shepherd rather than the default male/female, if only so you have more control on your skills and abilities. Now there are 6 classes to choose from: Soldier, Infiltrator, Vanguard, Adept, Sentinel and Engineer, and all come with their own pros and cons. Levels 1 to 5 grant you 3 points per level, levels 6 to 35 grant you 2 points per level, and levels 36 to 60 grant you 1 skill per level to spend however you want. Your squad mates gain 2 points per level from level 1 to 20, and from level 21 to 60 they gain only 1 point. I'll try not to go into too much detail for each class, but give you the basics so you can decide which class you think you can get your Shepherd through the game. Soldiers start with medium armour and are the only class that can equip heavy armour as well as use all 4 weapon types with proficiency if you level up that branch, we'll get to that, and become bullet sponges but have no real defensive or offensive tech or biotic skills and can be at a disadvantage and have to rely on squad mates for support. Soldiers do not get the electronics or description skills and must choose them either as a bonus or use a squad mate that has the relevant skills, both of which are handy against the synthetics you will face in the game and will become really handy during the fight on Eden Prime. Soldiers have assault training which increases melee and weapon damage and come in handy in certain places as some enemies may get a little too close for comfort, and fitness which can be unlocked 5 points into assault training. Fitness is a good skill to level up as it increases your maximum health as well as granting the immunity skill. If you've seen those pesky Krogan start glowing, then you've seen immunity and what it does. For a short period of time it bolsters your health and makes you more damage resistant. For the soldier class, I would level up either pistols or assault rifles, combat armour, fitness, assault training, your bonus skill and your specialisation class. Adept is the pure biotic class, able to use the majority of biotic skills in the game, though this comes with a hindrance. They can only wear light armour and they can only level up pistols once you reach level 6 in basic armour. Adepts have 2 powers that are extremely helpful for when you are starting to feel overwhelmed: lift and throw. These 2 can be really useful abilities and 3 of your squad mates will have at least one of these: Rex, Caden and Liara. So if you choose to have one of these with you, you can create a party that can keep enemies at bay. Adepts also have a few other skills that are really helpful, such as Stasis, where you can freeze a single enemy in one spot, useful against the more powerful types like Krogan and Geth Juggernauts, and then there's Warp, which will slowly whittle down the health bar of an enemy, even without losing their shields, which can give you that little bit of an edge when it comes to taking down tougher opponents. Singularity is also another really useful skill that sucks everyone nearby into a vortex and leaves them vulnerable to you and your team. Since Adepts can only use light armour, it's always good to have at least one soldier type in your party to balance this, whether that's Rex or Ashley, or to a lesser extent Garrus, and choose a tech squad member as the second member. For Adepts, I would level up basic armour, pistols, throw, lift and warp. Engineers are the tech equivalent of Adepts. able to use the majority of tech skills and once again can only use light armor, can only level up pistol skills, but they have no biotic skills whatsoever except whatever bonus the game lets you choose at the beginning of your character creator. Engineers have decryption and electronic skills which make hacking lock container doors and other such things easier over time, as well as granting you the overload and sabotage abilities, both very useful against synthetic enemies such as Geth, husks and combat drones. They also have the hacking ability which will let them control a single enemy for a short amount of time, and the higher the skill, the longer it lasts. Engineers also have the damping ability which will silence biotic enemies from being able to use their powers for a short amount of time. And if you use the medicine ability, you'll unlock the neural shock ability, which will let you drop a single enemy to the ground similar to being unconscious. For engineers, I would recommend leveling up pistols, basic armor, decryption, electronics, your bonus skill and your specialization class.
And this station is mine.
Vanguards use the more offensive skills of both the Soldier and Adept classes, which make them more of a hybrid class. With the right skills leveled up, you can have an effective mix of biotic power and weapon damage. There is not a whole lot to say about the Vanguard class because all of the 6 classes have a bit of bleed over when it comes to skill set and powers. For the Vanguard class, I would level up pistols, assault training, tactical armor, throw, lift, your bonus skill and your specialization class. Sentinels are a combination of tech and biotic skills, making them quite a formidable class if leveled up correctly. You will get a good sense of what a Sentinel is capable of if you use Caden, as that's his class too, but be warned, Sentinels have no armor or weapon skills and must rely on squadmates to cover them, so if you choose this class, make sure you always have one soldier and one tech squadmate. For Sentinels, I would recommend leveling up throw, lift, barrier, decryption, electronics, your bonus skill and your specialization class. Infiltrators have a combination of combat and tech skills, and as the image shows they are more of a long distance type class, though I would not recommend using sniper rifles for your insanity save. Sniper rifles only get off a few shots and are not good up close, as will happen with 90% of your shootouts during the game. For the Infiltrator class, I would level up pistols, tactical armor, fitness, electronics, decryption, your bonus skill and your specialization class. Regardless of which class you choose, my main piece of advice for your skills is to focus. Do not throw your points into multiple skills, as even if you do every side quest and talk to every person in the game, you will reach roughly level 50 before you face off against Saren. But if you throw your skills around, you can find that your shepherd is not as powerful as he or she could be. If you go by the recommendations I just mentioned, then you'll find you have points left over, in which case you can put them anywhere you want. And I would also recommend that you level up the actual class skill. It's only 6 points, but they will help your shepherd in the class you have chosen, and if you complete the side quest UNSC Rogue VI, a side mission that becomes available once you reach level 20 and travel to anywhere in the galaxy, that skill line expands into one of 2 specialization classes for your shepherd depending on your chosen class, and they go as follows: Bastion for Adept and Sentinel, Commando for Infiltrator and Soldier, Medic for Engineer and Sentinel, Nemesis for Adept and Vanguard, Shock Trooper for Soldier and Vanguard, and Operative for Engineer and Infiltrator. I also highly recommend that you do not level up your Shepherd's first aid skill, as once you become a Spectre, you unlock the Spectre training branch, which grants the Unity bonus, which is really useful when combined with a squad member who has a high first aid skill, and you can basically heal yourself all the way up. I would only level up first aid right near the end of the game, as there are other skills that you can employ, and the Metagel is generous enough and replenishes quickly from fallen enemies and loot drops. For me personally, I usually go with a soldier class because I'm a simple man and I specialise in either pistols or assault rifles because they have a faster firing rate and cooldown rate as opposed to the other weapons. For insanity, I would pick the Shock Trooper class as it gives increased health and damage protection. I also usually equip heavy armour and irrelevant weapons and upgrades, and your shepherd can become every bit the hardened space badass they were born to be. Another tip I would suggest, regardless of your class, is to put 2 of the starting points on the Normandy into either Charm or Intimidate, because when you reach Eden Prime and speak to the farmers and the guy at the spaceport, not only will you unlock dialogue options, but this will also grant you XP, as well as a decent starting pistol and a grenade upgrade. And if you're not going to use pistols, you'll have something to sell the next time you come across a merchant. We'll get to that later in the video. Okay, next up is another obvious one. Armour, equipment and upgrades. The gear you and your squad equip matters. Stronger armour have tougher shields and lets you take more damage, better weapons have higher fire rates, do more damage and more slot for upgrades, and the upgrades can add to these depending on your personal preferences. When it comes to upgrades for your weapons, the ones that I use is chemical rounds, which will become polonium rounds as you level up. What makes this especially great is that it can do damage over time, as the higher the upgrade mark, the more toxicity damage you do. Sadly, polonium rounds only go up to mark 7, but if you couple that with your squad upgrade, you can find a nice balance. Remember, your weapons will overheat, but your squad's weapons won't, so you can give them upgrades that would otherwise hinder you. High explosive rounds, cryo rounds, armor piercing rounds, these are all useful against the tougher opponents of the games like Krogans, Rachni, Geth Destroyers, Primes and Juggernauts, and even the Asari Commando enemy types. And remember, the higher the mark on your gun, the more upgrades it can use with the top tier weapons letting you have 3 slots, 1 for ammo type and 2 for other upgrades, so always check the description of what loot you bring in before you either convert it to Omnigel or sell it on. For armour upgrades, there are actually a few good ones to choose from, depending on not only your class but your playstyle. If you are more of a reserved duck behind cover type, then I suggest first aid interfaces, which become medical interfaces, and then medical exoskeletons, which help heal your shepherd over time. For the more gung-ho types, there are more choices, such as armour plating, ablative coating, and then energized plating, leading up to kinetic buffers and exoskeletons that boost your shields and mobile accuracy as you quite literally run and gun. The final upgrade worth talking about is the combat exoskeleton, which takes a lot of damage and only comes in the later levels of the game. One great feature is that if you switch up armour, you can eventually have 2 slots, meaning you can mix and match, so you can have a medical exoskeleton and a combat exoskeleton, meaning you can heal and take damage in equal measure. Like with weapons, always make sure to check the description of what it does before getting rid of it or assigning it to a squad mate. Those top 2 tips are mostly for the soldier class, but remember every other class will either have access to an Omnitool or a biotic amp, or even both in the case of the Adept and Sentinel. These greatly reduce the cooldown of your tech and biotic abilities and are a must have for you as much as a great gun or armour. Unlike weapons and armour, you cannot customise the Omnitools or amps, but always be on the lookout from gear dropped by enemies or from looting cases on uncharted worlds or even during story missions. And the final tip to do with weapons, armour and upgrades is to focus on your shepherd first and your squad second. It's game over when Shep dies, so make sure they are at their best before you focus on your squad. Don't worry, the game is very generous with loot even on Insanity, and if you see something a squad member might find useful, you'll probably find it again later on. Ashley, Caden and Liara all use human armour, and Rex, Garrus and Tally can only equip their respective species armour, so always save any of their gear to see if it's better than what they're currently wearing. Number 3 on my list is part and parcel of any RPG, experience points. Unlike ME2 and ME3, the levelling in Mass Effect 1 is a bit more traditional in that it lets you gain XP as you do things rather than at the end of missions. And Mass Effect 1 can be rather generous in its distribution of XP. You gain XP for killing enemies, examining objects and artifacts, hacking locked boxes and doors, completing speak checks and scanning planets. And if there was one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's this. Talk to everyone. Do everything, because if you do, and that includes talking to the Volus and Elcor ambassadors on the Citadel, speaking to the receptionists outside the embassies, talking to Avena every chance you get, and a few other things here and there, you can leave the Citadel at around level 11. So get out there and explore the Citadel, and once you get to Normandy, I would say the same for the galaxy at large. There are plenty of missions out there that can grant you XP, equipment and credits that will help your Shepherd and their team. And I would also recommend you pick either Paragon or Renegade before you start spending your points, because dabbling in both is a waste of points and doesn't grant you the bonuses both can when you get to certain points in the game, such as the standoff with Rex for instance. And when you reach 75% in either branch, you will get a specific quest related to said choice. If you've already played the game, then don't worry, you can still skip through the dialogue and still be granted XP. When it comes to the main missions of the game, I recommend you try and put them off for as long as you can, and absolutely make sure that you do Vermire last, because after you finish that mission, you're story locked and in the end game, where you break the Normandy out of the Citadel and travel to Ilos, which doesn't leave much room for levelling up your Shepherd. The order I always go is Therum, Theros, Novaria, Asteroid X-57, Vermire and then Ilos. Make sure you leave the asteroid until second to last, because when you finish that mission and all the stuff relating to it, you can have your pick of some pretty great rewards, including a powerful Omni tool which will help either you or one of your squad mates. Like I said, if you choose classic leveling, you can reach level 50 and maybe higher by the time you face Saren at the finale, and by then you should have all the best equipment in the game, as well as your skills being maxed out for you and your squad mates, which brings us neatly on to tip number 4. Next at number 4 is easily the best feature of the Mass Effect trilogy, and that's your Squadmates. Love them or hate them, there's no denying that they are all memorable in their own way, and each one of them can be a boost to Shepard's class and skill if you choose the right party members. There are 6 party members in ME1: Ashley, Kaidan, Rex, Garrus, Tali and Liara. And, like your Shepard, they are all one of the various classes you can pick. Ashley is a soldier, Kaidan is a Sentinel, Rex is a Krogan Battlemaster but is close to a Vanguard, Garrus is a Turian Agent which is close to an Infiltrator, which makes more sense when you see his weapon loadout in ME2, Tali is a Quarian Machinist, which is close to an Engineer, and Liara is an Asari Scientist, which is close to an Adept. And what you want is a good balance, and the game does a good job showing you whenever you leave the Normandy, with the 3 bars telling you the combat, tech and biotic strength of your party. The game, whether intentional or not, also lists your squadmates in a manner that complements each other. Ashley and Kaidan are a good combo together, as are Rex and Garrus, and Liara and Tali. Now, you don't have to stick to these combinations. Garrus and Tali are tech, so as long as they have a biotic with them, Rex, Kaidan or Liara, then you can handle pretty much any situation. If straight up combat is your way to go, then Ashley teamed up with Rex or Garrus will also give you a boost in biotic or tech abilities, as these 3 have the highest combat strength to add to your overall party. I highly recommend though that regardless of the class you pick for your Shepard, that you always have 1 tech and 1 biotic, just because this covers a major blind spot that each side can have. Biotics can lift and throw enemies or put them into stasis, techies can overload shields, hacking enemy AIs or using damper to neuter enemy abilities. Not to mention some of these skills can be used to protect your squad, such as barrier and immunity. Like your Shepard, I also recommend that you focus the skills of your squadmates. Focus on the weaknesses of your Shepard to complement you in combat. If you have Kaidan or Liara in your squad, lift and throw are very useful skills when you feel you're backed into a corner. Immunity is useful for Rex and basically makes him an unstoppable Krogan tank, and no matter who you have in your squad, always make sure their class skill is chosen, which is the one right at the bottom of the skill tree.
Let's see what you got.
You bet, Commander.
My final entry is shopping. Now this last one might seem out of place, and it is a short entry when compared to the other entries, because it's only to deal with 3 specific things. One is to buy licenses whenever they become available. The second is to buy grenade and metagel capacity upgrades whenever they become available. When you start the game, you will only have carrying capacity for 5 grenades and 5 uses of metagel. Once you have bought all the upgrades, that capacity turns to 10, which of course can be a great help, especially grenades depending on the upgrade you give them. The third reason only applies to the CSEC Armory Officer and the Requisitions Officer on the Normandy, and that's to do with the Spectre gear you unlock once you finally become a Spectre. These weapons have the best balance of damage, fire rate and cooldown when compared to all other weapons in the game. Now you won't be able to buy them straight away, but about halfway through the game you should be able to afford them. Although buy them one at a time, first for your Shepard and then for whichever squadmate you desire. For the rest of my shopping advice, there are merchants all over the game. 4 of them are on the Citadel, 5 if you count Dr. Michelle if you want to buy first aid interfaces or medical exoskeletons, but I would advise against that because when you reach certain levels, enemies will drop these as loot anyway and they will be automatically added to your inventory. A couple of bonus tips for you. Number 1. Always stay in the Mako when you can and shoot and blast enemies from afar. Certain enemy types can take a lot of damage on Insanity, but a couple of blasts from the cannon will make short work of them. Plus you can either run enemies over or use the jet boost to keep out of danger from rocket and energy attacks. Number 2. Don't be afraid to manipulate the AI. Those enemies will be more aggressive on Insanity. That doesn't always mean you'll be struggling. The AI can still be really stupid or just downright odd. Sometimes staying in one point or keep to a confined area can be really useful while you wait for your skills, armour and health to recharge. And if you're on an uncharted world and find yourself overwhelmed inside a base, leave and get in your Mako to heal and then go back inside and you'll find the enemies have all moved back to their original positions. Don't worry, enemies don't respawn, so any you've dropped will stay dead. And there you go, those are my top 5 tips, plus 2, for getting through Mass Effect 1 on Insanity. If these tips helped you in any way, feel free to drop a like or a comment, let me know, and for those of you who have already beat the game on Insanity and have any tips that helped you through your Insanity save that I didn't mention here, feel free to leave them in the comments below where other people can see it. Stay tuned for Insanity tips for Mass Effect 2 and 3. I've been Craig, this has been Amalgamingle, and thanks for watching.